Okay, we have a wonderful guest today. He is an emerging tech lead at KPMG and co-founder of Transhuman Coin. We have a background in the finance industry and practicing in tech. This is Peter Xing. What will happen? What will happen to people that say don't jump onto the crypto bandwagon? Are they going to be left behind, or are the people who jump on first, will they be the guinea pigs?
Yeah. I mean, there's always no harm doing nothing for a while, right? A little while. Just like the internet. For those that didn't, you know, get an internet connection, I remember the people that did dial-up, right? They'd, take over the telephone and stick it into their computers and, try the internet at 28.8K and, someone would pick up the phone and then they'd be like, my internet's gone. I was downloading all night,
Those were
trying
the
to get some
days.
music.
Yes.
But, same with crypto, right? Someone will try and test out a little things. It's very clunky in terms of user interface right now because, you didn't have something that's as mainstream as it could be. But yeah, beta testers. I think in terms of long term though, you got to understand like this whole technology accelerates at an exponential pace, and it's gonna hit us when it becomes, less. It makes you less competitive if you don't know enough by the time it gets to the mainstream. So let's say, example, like your smartphone in your pocket. If you didn't have that, right, how far behind would you be in terms of productivity, in terms of being with it in society, in terms of like just communicating to even loved ones, right? All of that is now wrapped up in a technology we've become so dependent on. But it's the iPhone 14 now, right? It's evolved over the last 14 years. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is still at its infancy because Bitcoin, sure, it was invented in 2008, but the mainstream adoption in terms of the user interfaces and all that, it was just coming online at the end of the last cycle, which is around 2017, 2018. Like at the end of the last crypto winter, people would just head down building, that's what they're saying, or building. Because there was no more of that hype and noise in the market, like less speculation on the price of these cryptocurrencies and more about the application of the technologies themselves and how to actually make things better, like actually add value in the economy. The whole premise we talked about earlier with crypto is that it's meant to remove the middleman, right?
See, that's what I was asking about actually, because one of my big, I don't know if you'd call it a pet peeve, but one of my big worries with crypto is it doesn't, like, we have the Reserve Bank and, the US has the Federal Reserve or something. So what is anchoring crypto?
Yeah, like, the governments, right? They can enforce things. They can enforce with police and the military and hospitals. Like, they provide the infrastructure. With crypto, the only thing you got to enforce is probably the blockchain networks, the infrastructure supporting that. So with Bitcoin, it's the Bitcoin mining infrastructure all around the world. Because, China tried to ban Bitcoin. And what happened there? All the Bitcoin miners just shipped over to North America, to Russia.
Oh yeah,
right?
Russia.
So it didn't stop Bitcoin. And so the genie's out of the bottle now. And the technology continues to...
Is it almost like a, it's almost, to me, it looks almost like a stock. It's like that volatile, and it's based on what you think the stock's worth, and it might change, and it usually does change after a quarterly earnings report. So I'm just wondering, because like how on earth did it? What's that one that just crashed? 26 billion.
Oh, FTX.
FTX.
Yeah.
And they were running it in a penthouse in the Bahamas or something.
Yeah. So that's a crypto exchange as well, right?
Oh, that's the exchange. So what happened there?
Yeah, it was like 36 billion at one point, probably more at at the peak of the cycle. But FTX is one of the largest centralized crypto exchanges, and its downfall, people equate it to the Lehman collapse, or right, like
Lehman Brothers.
But it's probably closer to Enron in terms of the particular case itself, because it actually involved fraud by Sam Bankman-Fried. And there's a meme going on that it's like people calling him Sam Bank-Run-Fraud or something like that. They're saying they're going to be a Netflix movie about all this drama that's happened in the past couple of weeks, starring like Jonah Hill and Arya Stark from for the person that from Alameda. But just to give you an overview, so FTX, third largest centralized crypto exchange in the world, and Sam Bankman-Fried is the CEO, and he was the poster child for regulation in the crypto industry. Like, so he went to Congress, and he sat in Washington and talked to all the regulators saying we need clarity for cryptocurrency, and he had this front that he put on to say he was all clean and supportive of regulation, and he's an effective altruist, which means that you're meant to make a lot of money but give it all away in the most effective way, right? This is all part of the front that he was putting up. But at the end of the day, what he was doing was he took the customer deposits that were put into the crypto exchange. So you and me, if we put money into the crypto exchange to buy Bitcoin, right, the money that we deposited in Australian dollars or whatever, was essentially just transferred out by him. And he sent it to a sister company that he made a lot of money on, called Alameda Research. So he also runs and owns Alameda Research. Well, there is a CEO, Caroline, right? But so he owns both companies, FTX and Alameda Research. And he's pretty much treating them as the same bank account, right? He's taking customer money, lending it to Alameda Research, or lending it, right? And Alameda Research, right, is just this hedge fund, this proprietary trader on the markets, making markets and taking a clip, front running the customers of FTX because they can see all the order flow. That's not the illegal part. Apparently that's legal, right? Which is quite surprising because that sounds like front running in the stock markets, but because cryptocurrencies is
It's
still
got different
early
rules.
days. But this also happens with Robinhood, right? Robinhood can sell this deal for order flow to the likes of Citadel, which is another hedge fund that can trade, and Citadel trades ahead of the Robinhood customers, and they pay for that privilege. And so Alameda Research, pretty much were able to have cheat codes to a game, and yet they still lost a lot of money. And it got to about $10 billion of customer funds that was actually lent to Alameda Research so that they could also speculate. Now, this would have been all fine if it was in a bull market, right? Because Alameda Research could have made money with that customer deposit money and paid it back. But what turned out is, what happened during a bear market, right? People want their money back. So there was lots of loans that Alameda Research had provided out to customers and their clients. And what happened with the Terra Luna collapse, which is a crypto project, it put a big hole in the entire ecosystem. So people were pulling money and saying, we want our money back. Alameda Research couldn't pay it back themselves. So they got the money from FTX. And to hold as collateral, right, for that loan from FTX, they held FTT tokens, which is FTX's cryptocurrency that was, minted out of thin air, that you could use to pay for things like brokerage costs, for trading fees, right? So this token was worth more than $20 at the time, right? And after it collapsed, obviously it goes to zero. So all of this was just this intrinsic web of collateralized debt, but the collateral itself was minted out of thin air. And so, timeline-wise, by the time it started all falling apart, like, it was too late. So the timeline went, I think it was at a point where there was a leak on CoinDesk that Alameda Research's balance sheet was mostly consisted of these FTT tokens. Like, it was like tens of billions of dollars worth, right? And CZ, who's the CEO of Binance, a competitor, right, found out. And CZ was an early investor of FTX. So in 2019, when Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to, launch his exchange, right, he got investment from CZ, Zhao, right? And Binance is, you know, based in the Caymans, right? So it's not like these guys are all clean either. But so they were supporting FTX, and they pretty much started to compete against each other because FTX got really big really quick. And CZ was like, oh, you know, I want to get out because you're competing against us. And also FTX wanted to get, you know, crypto licenses in the US, and having Binance on their term sheet wasn't, you know, very good for an investment perspective. So they got out, and in return, Binance received about $500 million of these FTT tokens that were worth at the time of this whole thing collapsing. So when CZ found out from CoinDesk that Alameda Research and FTX were pretty much, there was no walls between them, right? And this FTT token was the collateral for the money that had been lent from FTX. He suspected that shit was going down, right? He suspected that FTX must be some kind of way of have lent out customer deposits to Alameda Research, and that this whole FTT token thing was a scam. And he announced to the public that he was going to sell the FTT tokens. Then that started this whole collapse of and bank run.
I'm thinking, what is the difference between what they did and a rug pull?
Yeah, well, a rug pull would be, say, a liquidity pool.
The liquidity is still there, but
right.
it's just...
That's right, yeah. So rug pool, an example would be, let's say, the Squid Game token, right? This is like one of the famous scam tokens where the smart contract, right, had a code in it where it allowed the team founders to pretty much take out all the money in the liquidity pool. And so in a decentralized finance instance, like the code is, you know, it should be the law, right? The whole project is governed by the code. And in this code, typically you would have a liquidity pool where people can buy in and out, and automatically determines the price based on demand and supply and how much is in this pool of money. And so as more people wanted to buy, say, the Squid Game token, right, the larger the liquidity pool got. And when it got to a certain point, the founders were like, yes, right, we have this code in the smart contract of the liquidity pool that we could just take all the money out and run. And because it was all pseudonymous and no one really able to identify all these people, they got away with it. Right, so that's what a rug pull is. And it literally, everyone thought they were getting rich as they pumped this token, the Squid Game token, and then the next minute it's worthless because there's nothing to trade it with, and all the money was gone. But yeah, so comparing that to what Sam Bankman-Fried did at FTX, which is more just fraud, because in the terms of service of a crypto exchange, of his crypto exchange, FTX in particular, it said, you know, we pretty much hold one for one what the customer deposits. Like, we can't do anything with your money without your say so, right? Like, so the customers can still direct FTX to lend out their money and earn an interest on it, so like 8% for FTX to lend out their money, right? But in the terms of service, for regular customers that deposit their money on the exchange, FTX was not allowed to lend that money else to anyone, right, without their permission. So that's just legal. Like, that's fraud. It's deceived the customers of the exchange. And what he did, he took out like $8 billion of those customer deposits in the end, like the net difference between what they had in the assets to their liabilities, right? I think they had $3 billion of assets left, and $1.6 billion of that was worth in FTT tokens. So that's actually zero. So they really only had 1.4 billion in assets at the end of the day. And the liabilities was about 11 billion, right? So massive hole. And you know, CZ, when he was looking to dump his FTT tokens, right, he didn't know about all this. He didn't know that the hole was that big. He suspected some of that money was lent out, but he didn't know it was like most of it, right? And so when he announced on Twitter publicly that, hey guys, you know, because, you know, when you're doing large transfers on the blockchain of FTT tokens, people know there's a whale alert. It's like, oh, someone's transferred all these FTT tokens from an unknown address onto an exchange. So which means typically that you're going to sell, right? It's a big indicator when a large sum of money goes into a centralized exchange. Yeah, so that's where the liquidity is. And and CZ and his team were like, oh yeah, we should probably announce this to the public because in the spirit of transparency and also not get into trouble later on to manipulate the market, we said, well, we're selling this because, we heard that FTX had been talking behind our backs against the regulators saying, Binance is bad and all, but also because of this CoinDesk article that Alameda Research had all this FTT tokens on the balance sheet. So when they announced that, people panicked. People were like, crap, FTT token could be worthless, and therefore FTX exchange could be worthless, and we should get our money out. So there was a bank run on the FTX. So people started withdrawing their money, and guess what? There was no money to withdraw, right? Alameda Research tried to feed in some stable coins into FTX to, support the bank run, and as people were withdrawing it, but Sam couldn't keep people from withdrawing, right? And so they had to slow it down initially, and Sam was lying on Twitter saying, assets are fine, we're fine, everything's fine.
That's when you know there's a problem.
Exactly.
When someone is saying
when everything's saying
fine.
Is fine, this is fine. Have you seen that meme with the puppy drinking the coffee with the flames all around?
This is fine.
This is fine. And then it wasn't fine, and the next day, Sam calls up CZ and says, hey, I need a bailout. I'm not going to be able to support these customers. And CZ initially thought they wanted to do an OTC deal, like over-the-counter transfer of the FTT tokens, the 500 million, to buy it over the counter because they thought, okay, we didn't want to impact the price too much because there's a lot of this collateralized loans, right? But Sam Bankman-Fried had tried all other avenues to get funding, and obviously going to his direct competitor was the last resort. And so CZ was like, all right, we'll check it out. We'll we'll do some due diligence and we'll see how we go. So there was a sort of in principle agreement to buy it out. So that's when you heard, okay, Binance might buy FTX, and people breathed a sigh of relief at the time. They thought, maybe we'll get our money back and we can stop.
Is there any similarity to what happened there and the subprime mortgage issue of 2008?
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. Yeah, the whole, being addicted to debt, right? Because the cost of debt was pretty much zero.
Yeah, and you've got AAA rating thing, and then they
packaged it
as AAA, and then it just sounds like the
CDOs, the CDO manager. What's a CDO?
Consolidated
collateralized debt obligation.
Yeah, something like that. Debt. Wow.
Yeah, pretty much how do they explain it on The Big Short? It was just old fish chucked into a big barrel of soup, and then that's a new thing, right? It's a completely new thing. You can grade it as grade A, AAA.
I should watch that again.
Yeah, no, it's
when
good.
I watched it, I had no idea what they were talking about.
Michael Burberry, he's still going. That guy's still shorting.
Yeah,
but he's starting to buy again in the public markets again. He's buying prison stocks.
His last tweet, I think, was, "You have no idea how short I am." That's what his last tweet was.
And he's damn right again. God damn it, Michael Burberry. This guy.
And they always use the same photo of him.
Yeah.
It's just this dude, I don't know.
I think, it's, who played him? Who played
Michael
him
Burry, Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, yeah. It's still, in my mind, that's the more true Michael Burry. But yeah, there's similarities, greed, debt, lack of regulation and transparency. Right, all of that's there, and Enron is probably the closest.
And no one thought it could go bust.
Yeah, because Sam Bankman-Fried, right? He comes from a noble house, right? Both his parents are from Stanford. One's a tax lawyer, right? And his aunt runs a super PAC for the Democrats.
That's
right?
why he was transferring all that money to the Democrats.
Yeah, there's a line item in the spreadsheet balance sheet, right? The real balance sheet of Trump lose.
Trump lose, that's it. Trump lose.
The Democrats. This is why it's not as widely covered as well in mainstream media. All the sort of Democrat supporting ones. They're trying to paint him in a lighter picture.
He said, when I'm making these lines, I'm not expecting people to read them later or something. I can't remember what he said.
It's to help him remember what the money's for.
Trump lose.
Trump
There
lose.
we go.
But yeah, that's how like people realize where is he getting all this money? Because he was paying for like sports stadiums, right? The FTX arena, right? And all this money that was going to politicians, and he was promising $1 billion.
Yes, that's right. And he only bought what, 40 or 70? Or...
Yeah, that's right. So he only paid for the light version and not the full package, right? So you
the
might still go to jail.
policy.
You might still go to jail. He didn't get the full package. But that's why people were so shocked, because he was on the cover of Forbes and all this sort of all these like credible magazines and publications, and I think it was Sequoia that did a whole write up about him, how he was all for effective altruism and he wanted to give away, and he was living a really sort of kind of like Warren Buffett, like light, doesn't not excess, no excess, drives a Corolla, grey t-shirt all the time
in the Bahamas.
On the Bahamas, he looks like he's on the spectrum as well. Like people just thought he was a misunderstood nerd, right? Or right. Someone that's on the spectrum and is a genius. But behind all of that, he just pretty much committed fraud against everyone that trusted him with his money. White collar
crime. They'll still go to jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the weird bit.
Man. Yeah, big tech is, tech companies in general, they're getting a bad name for all these like genius founders. We just saw the Bad Blood, Theranos, right? Go to jail
10,
as well.
10, 11 years?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, 11 years. Yeah, Elizabeth Holmes. All right. But yeah, so that's, when all shit hit the fan and people realized that FTX wasn't going to do a deal with Binance, right?
I thought they took Binance with them during the downfall.
No.
No?
Yeah, so Binance walked away. So CZ took one look. They took less than 24 hours, right, to say nope, because they saw there was a $10 billion hole and Sam had pretty much used up all the customer deposits.
Jeepers.
And there was no, Chinese war between Alameda Research and FTX, and they were being investigated by the regulators as a result. So there's criminal investigations going on. They didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, so they just walked away.
I thought that they paid enough money to the super PAC to stop that from happening.
Well, that's the thing. Why do you think he's not in jail yet? Right?
It's not in jail yet.
And to be honest, a lot of the mainstream media articles about it, the whole fiasco is actually quite light. They're saying, he just made some mistakes as opposed to outright fraud.
Oh, it must be the left-leaning media.
Yeah, because he was the poster child for everything that was good in the world, right? The whole work left around, ESG and also. But the thing is, when he did the a Vox interview, and the exchanges of messages, he had said that all of that was just a front. All of that was bullshit, because he just said the right things, right? That ticked all the boxes so that the woke agenda could actually just continue to fund him and continue to push the stories out, and all the investors will continue to go on board. So yeah, it's a real freaking eye opener. You just can't trust anyone in this world around what they say and what they do. But yeah, judge them by what they do, not what they say. And his parents actually just got investigated as well, because they're actually holding $120 million of real estate in the Bahamas. Where did that money come from? Right? So it's when Sam Bankman-Fried got the latest round of funding, he took out $300 million out of FTX into his own account. So,
is that legal?
That's not legal. I highly doubt it. Right?
I mean, Elon Musk can barely sell Tesla shares without people going nuts.
Yeah, if he was selling FTT tokens, sure. If you dump that on the market, that's semi-legal. That's still an exchange of value. It wasn't something that customers had deposited into a bank or equivalent. And the thing is, compare a crypto exchange to a bank, right? A bank has certain capital requirements. So if you go CBA and all that, they have to keep at least 70% or something like that. In the reserve, they can't lend out, say, home loans, but more beyond that point. That's
Except
the sort
for
of
the
that's why
reserve
there's
bank, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
Reserve Bank
Reserve
has-
Bank is the ultimate.
Reserve
We can
Bank.
print out of nowhere, right? But the commercial banks, right, like CBA and all that, that's why there's only four big banks because the capital requirements are so high. We saw
Right.
all those like neo banks trying to come online, right? You know, like the Vault banks and the
And they're
guys.
underwritten by the
Yeah,
big four
they
anyway.
had to be underwritten, yeah. And then at the end of the day, they still require them to have all this tier one capital or sort of these capital requirements, and they couldn't do it, so they had to give back their banking licenses. And so that's like this is why regulation is important because you don't have this issue of crypto exchanges just doing whatever they want with the money.
See, this is the thing. This is what I think, with crypto exchanges, you want the barriers to entry to be
Mm.
severely high
Mm.
so that only the people with the biggest wallets and biggest backing can
Mm.
can set these up.
Mm.
Because otherwise, I don't know.
Or rather than regulate, just make sure it can't be done. So what happened after the aftermath? So, we talked about how, Binance walked away. Yeah. So then FTX filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So Sam Bankman-Fried regretted that because he still thought he could make the money, right? But they did all that. But the thing is, if they were able to prove their reserves using blockchain technology or something similar, right? They could prove that the customer funds, when they were deposited, that's linked to, the cryptocurrencies that are held on their behalf, right? All of that is tracked in some form. That would prevent this whole mistrust or bank run in the first place, and also misdirection of where the funds go as well. Like you can't take away the money if it's, something that is on the record that everyone can see. It's like, hang on a second.
Wasn't that the whole point of using a blockchain?
Exactly.
To
Exactly. That's where decentralized finance is the future. Like, because centralized finance is always determined by what people do with your money. And if those controls aren't there, or those audit trails aren't there, public audit trails aren't there, then it defeats the purpose.
So how did it break down in this case?
Well, really was just no controls. So when Chapter 11 was filed for FTX and all its subsidiaries, including in Australia, so that's a really unfortunate, saddest thing because FTX Australia was run by, Jamie is a wonderful guy. Like he probably had no idea that this was coming, right, in Australia. They also had to go into voluntary administration. But when all that happened, John Ray, the guy who did the John Ray the second or third, was Ray the second, he did the Enron. He was the sort of chief restructuring officer for Enron, right? He jumped on board for FTX, and he said, out of my 30-year career, including all the cases that I've seen, this is by far the worst, right? It just had zero controls. The accounting systems, there was a back door installed on the software that allowed SBF to transfer the money, the $10 billion out, without triggering any of the,
Whale alert.
the alerts, or within its own software, like ERP systems, right? So even the ERP systems are compromised. like it's like, and then these shadow spreadsheets of balance sheet accounts, and all the team members at FTX were just all staying together in this Bahamas mansion, and apparently there was some like saucy things happening amongst them as well, and Alameda research. So there was and it was an HR nightmare, you would say, right? I guess.
Yeah.
It would be like sleeping with each other or something like that. But so John Ray the second was like, what the hell am I looking at here? But granted, he still found a way to recover some. So there's still potential cents on the dollar that customers might get back. We'll see how it goes because there's like lots of entities. Some of them are, some of them still have some liquidity in them. But at the end of the day, when we talked about how to prevent like this audit tracing of all this, right? There's a solution being pushed out by Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum, and he's suggesting proof of reserves using a technology called Merkle trees. So this is where, we talked about being able to trace the fiat dollar that's deposited onto the crypto exchange and then covering for everything that happens within the exchange so that you're constantly creating, a real-time snapshot of that reserve, and therefore you can prove solvency because you're not just tied to the assets, you can also tie that to the liabilities. So this is one of the first steps towards on-chain accounting, right? So on-chain accounting means that every transaction is visible by the public, just like a blockchain would be.
Yep.
And that's what the whole point of the blockchain is, decentralized finance.
So this is where I think that there is this is what I'm interested in asking. So with the push to have all of these transparent systems, do you really think that is ultimately the end goal of all financial institutions? As in, do they want that?
Yeah, I mean, it should be that, right? But
do they really want that?
What's the incentive for them to do that?
How can you cook the books when it's...
Yeah, exactly. Like, shouldn't they also be able to front run the market, right? If they reveal all their transactions, then everyone has... No one, they lose their advantage, right? And also dealings.
That's it.
Secret deals can be done in the dark. And that's the saddest part. So as consumers, as the ultimate users and transactions of value, like people in the economy, we should actually try to drive this decentralization, because ultimately the power's not in our hands right now. It's in these centralized organizations where they can keep things in the dark. And who knows when the next FTX is going to happen.
That's what I think. That's how they want it.
Exactly.